Well, the dye is dried. I gave it a couple of days. And then I took my buffing rag and gave it a good going over. And you can see there's some gloss coming out on it already. And it got dye everywhere I wanted to and not where I didn't want it to, so that's a good thing. Now, if y'all remember correctly, if I remember correctly, this thing was wet and dried several times in the course of making it. You know, I had to wet it, fold it over, wet it again to flatten it out, put stitch holes in it, wet it again to fold it over, and after it was stitched, I cleaned it all with alcohol, that wet it again, then you dyed it, and well, wet again, and it has to dry. And what all that does is it actually dries out the leather, but it doesn't ruin it. What you can do, or what I do anyway, is I treat it with some pure neat's foot oil. This is oil that comes out of a cow, so I figured, actually, I know that it's good for putting the oil back into leather. You don't need loads and loads of it. Just a nice coating, nice even coating over the surface of the leather. You actually don't have to get it everywhere, because as it absorbs, it'll spread. But I still like to get it everywhere. Also, it helps to remove the excess dye. Because if you recall, when we dyed this thing, we made it a point to use too much dye. And I found that when I'm dyeing black leather, it works better that way. I mean, I dye it until I apply the black dye until it actually puddles on the surface. Okay, and once I have it coated with the neat's foot oil, there we go, with the neat's foot oil, I go back and I wipe off the excess. Now, neat's foot never dries; it stays moist. What it does do is it absorbs into the leather and puts the oils and the moisture back in the leather that was removed through all that wetting and drying stuff. Almost in silliness. It wasn't silly. It had to be done. Now, you don't want to soak it in neat's foot, because what that'll do, well, with this it's not that big of a deal, but what that'll do is it'll soften the leather. So if you have a holster like this in here with molded in retention, you just want to put a light coat of neat's foot oil in it. You don't want to put so much that it softens the leather. And that's the first part to putting a finish on this thing. I'm going to let that sit overnight, maybe over a couple of nights, and then it's time for the tan coat. And that's when you really bring out the shine in the leather. I've given this thing a couple of days, actually one day, and the neat's foot has soaked in and it's ready for a top coat. I'm going to use tan coat to put a top coat on it. Okay, put it on with a dauber, and I got my paper towel handy. And if y'all have watched my other video series on doing leather work, you'll know what this is for. Take and wipe it all over it. Don't really have to be neat, just make sure you get it everywhere. Come back with your paper towel and wipe off the excess. Whoops. Then I'm going to do this part up here, making sure that I get it into the stitch line. Give it a second or two, and then again I'll wipe off the excess. Now I'll do the back side. Make sure I get it down to that stitch line there. Sometimes I know I get out of frame when I'm doing this, because honestly, I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking at what I'm doing. But I figure I've got at least enough on video so y'all can figure out what's going on. And you get a nice thin coating over the entire thing. And when that cures, it'll protect it. And keep it from getting scuffed up. Also, it'll prevent any dye transfer onto your clothing. Because as you can see, there's more black dye coming off. Once this top coat is dry, that'll be it. Let me get this part. This part here. All right, and there you go. Give it a look. Take a look at it, make sure it looks good, and then I can start buffing it. It's not absolutely necessary to buff it. I just think it helps the finish look a little bit better if you buff it out a bit. And I just use the same paper towel. Okay, now all that's left is to let this cure for a couple of days, and it's on to the next project. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my clamp, right? set stick in it, close the clamp on it, and it could just sit there wherever I want to put it and dry. Alright, see y'all next time.